First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Santiago Arias. I'm not a professor. I'm a retired engineer that I consider myself very happy and very lucky because in the last 10 years of my professional career, I participate in the most interesting projects in CSP sector, designing, constructing, and later operating Gema Solar Valle 1 and Valle 2. My role here today is to try to speak about CSP technologies in general, a technology that I feel very proud to be one of the pioneers, and also a technology that I consider that they will develop very largely in the future. This presentation has been made with the support of Rafael Guedet, and anyhow, here you have the two emails, Rafael and my email. So in case that you have some doubts or something like that, do not hesitate to contact us directly through email, and either of us will be more than willing to answer your questions. On the first session, I'm going to be speaking about renewable energy, in particular on concentrated solar power and the advantages of this technology. I will be speaking about CSP from the investor standpoint. I will be speaking about CSP from the country standpoint because of the local content that these kind of plants are providing. And also I will speak about the actual situation of deployment of CSP plants worldwide. When I speak about renewable energies, I always start speaking about the oil prices. And this is the graph showing the trend of the oil prices in the last 150 years. And you can see that in real prices, the cost of oil was pretty horizontal and pretty stable for 100 years. And then suddenly in 1972, during the crisis, what is called the first oil crisis, coincident with the Iraq-Iran war, the price was starting to jump up. And not in real cost, but in the, let's say, compensate cost in actual dollars, the price in 1979 was reaching more or less the same price as today in considering inflation. After those years, if we consider just the last 30 years, you will see that there are two special things in this trend. The first one is that there are many ups and downs. This is a very good market for speculators. You can buy at very low prices, and just 1 year later, the price is going to be duplicated or something like that. It's also very good for bad investors, and you can be buying on the peak of those points, those mountains, to be forced to sell when the price is again very, very low. But in general, apart from those ups and downs, which is clear is that the price has been growing in an exponential way. And I wonder if you consider that the price in the next 50 years is going to remain as it is today, or you consider that the price in the next 50 years is going to be about this level or even higher. And I am among the ones that believe that the price in the next 50 years maybe is going to be 6 or 7 times the actual prices. Maybe you are questioning why I refer to 50 years. And this is the second part in the equation. Because most of the renewable plants are very long period of depreciation. I think this is a very good example. This is the Hoover Dam that was made in 1931. And the first thing that obviously shocked me about this picture is that, well, all these engineers today will be fired because not complying with the health and safety requirements. But the fact is that this plant has been producing electricity since 1936. So for more than 80 years, that plant has been operating and producing electricity. Obviously today it's a plant that is fully depreciated. But it's not only the renewable energy sector. The energy sector in general is pretty long-term oriented. And this is another good example. The picture is showing a modern American city, and then in the core of the city you see this small building made on bricks. And again, this is a coal plant. It's a power plant powered with coal, and was made in 1938 and has been producing 72 gigawatts hour per year since 1938. So let me emphasize on two aspects. The first one is that the energy sector is a very long-term oriented. And on top of that, if you believe that the price of the fossil fuels is going to continue escalating, I don't think that considering that a long depreciation time is a fair perspective to install new plants to produce electricity based on fossil fuels. On the contrary, I believe that in one generation, so more or less when you reach my age, I believe that the energy will be renewable or will not be any energy. I want to describe what is a CSP plant. CSP means concentrate solar power. And really it's a process in which we are taking solar energy to produce electricity. But the process is a very complex one. I mean, first of all, we need to concentrate the light, and we use mirrors positioned in a certain mode, so the light is reflected and is concentrated either in a line or in a small spot. On that spot, in the spot in which we concentrate of the light, we have a huge accumulation of energy. And then we are passing through a fluid. The fluid gets hot. So we have already converted the solar energy into thermal energy. Thermal energy which is used to produce steam. And then the steam is delivered to a turbine, and the turbine is attached to a generator which is going to produce electricity. And sometimes I wonder if all the engineers working in that sector, if we are nuts, if we are a bit masochist, because everybody knows that just by putting some PV panels here, you are going to be converting the solar energy into electricity in a single and sample step. So why to do something so complex when in a single step you can do the same effect? Well, this presentation is going to show you that there are some advantages of the CSP technology that are not available for any other renewable modern technology like the wind turbines or the PV. The advantage is that on CSP we have the power under control. We can produce electricity when electricity is needed and not just when the conditions are favorable. Meaning that in a PV installation, in a photovoltaic installation, you are producing light when the irradiation is pretty intense. That's very good. I mean, you are producing light when the light is available. In a wind turbine system, you produce electricity, when the wind is very strong. And when the wind is not strong, you are not producing electricity. So those are intermittent forms of producing electricity. But this, for a given country, is not a good solution, mainly because People want to have electricity mostly in between 7 to 9 in the night. This is the time that the Europeans are consuming more electricity, and at that time, if you are not producing, you are not generating any power. Whatever you are doing when you produce electricity not at the peak time is to subtract hours of operation of somebody else that needs to refrain their production just to allow you to produce, and then when the electricity is really demanded, they are going to be there, but you are not producing at that time, and this is not sustainable. Okay, this is not the case of CSP, and it's not the case because we can do many things to guarantee a production. For instance, you remember that in the previous slide, I was saying that one of the steps in the process is thermal. Okay, we can provide thermal energy from the solar field, but then we can have any other form of producing thermal energy, and then to combine the thermal energy coming from the solar field with any other form of thermal energy, let's say by burning coal, burning gas, burning biomass or something like that. And in fact, there are many plants worldwide that are using that technology. They are combining the burning of a fossil fuel or a renewable fuel with a solar plant to increase the number of hours of operation in the plant. More than that, my view on the future is that PV and CSP will be combined together. So in 20 years' time, my vision is that all the sunny countries, in particular the south of Portugal, south of Spain, south of Greece, will be literally covered with PV panels and CSP plants to produce electricity, reliable electricity, not only to the sunny countries, but also exporting the electricity to the rest of Europe. This is like a new form of hybridization, and CSP will be very well combined to PV. We are not competing with PV. I think in the future we'll be all together, we'll be able to produce an electricity which is directly produced by PV panels during the day, and then the CSP plants will be storing the energy to continue producing during the night. Because again, I mentioned that one of the steps in the process was thermal, and it is very easy to store thermal energy. And you might say, okay, electricity can also be stored by using batteries. I only want to remind you that the battery in your car is able to store something like 60, 80, maybe 90 watts-hour of energy. Just in Gema Solar, which is a very small plant, we are storing 900 million watts-hour of energy, thermal energy, simply by keeping a huge tank filled up with hot molten salts. So storing the energy at large scale today cannot be achieved by using batteries, but can be easily achieved by using the thermal step of the CSP plants. On top of that, the battery in your car will be lasting maybe 4 or 5 years. In fact, has a number of cycles, and after a number of cycles, you have to replace the batteries. But it's not only the ones in your car. When you go to PV installation, you need to be replacing the batteries more or less so frequently as in the car, or even more frequently than the battery in your car. And that is creating obviously not only a cost factor or a cost limitation, but also an environmental limitation. What to do with millions of batteries that need to be replaced just to provide the storage capacity that we have in Gema Solar. There is another small advantage, which is the wave quality. both wind turbines and PV panels are producing electricity on DC form. And the DC form needs to be modified and changed to AC, and this is made by using inverters. Well, inverters have a certain quality, but they produce harmonics. They produce undesirable high frequency waves that could be affecting the quality of the grid if the proportion of PV or wind energy introduced in the grid is sufficient to be, let's say, detectable. In our case, we use standard synchronous turbines, turbines connected to synchronous alternators, meaning that the electricity we produce is as good as a nuclear plant or as good as the one produced in a traditional coal plant. In fact, our plants are very, very similar to a small coal plant, but instead of burning coal, what we are doing is extracting the energy from the solar field to produce steam. Then the steam will be converted into electricity by means of a turbine. Only something like 7 years ago, when we started in Andasol making the first storage system for CSP plants in the world, many people was asking us, why storing? Why are you going to be making that additional step in the process, which obviously is adding some cost, if nobody is paying for that? Well, today, this is not an issue. I mean, today, everyone, the whole sector is convinced that CSP is practical and is justified by using the storage system. And if you are engineers, you will enjoy this explanation. The solar resource, the solar energy, is obviously variable during the day. So in a given day, you will have a rising power starting 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, reaching a peak in the middle of the day. Then in the afternoon, will go down. And obviously during the night, you have zero irradiation, zero energy, available energy to produce. So my first question is, you as an engineer, which turbine are you going to be buying? Because if you buy a turbine suitable for that amount of energy to be processed, to be converted into mechanical energy, 99% of the time, the turbine will be operating under the specified conditions. And this is even worse because really this is one single day. But in reality, in different days during the year, you will have different shapes of energy available, and the situation could be even worse. Then the normal solution for this problem is to buy a turbine suitable for that amount of energy, something in between the peak and the minimum daily available energy. Then my question is, what happens with all this energy which is over the capacity of absorbing energy by your turbine? And the answer is that in order to prevent overheating the system, you need to be defocusing the solar field, let's say losing energy to the maximum which is going to be delivered to the turbine. So first of all, if you don't have any storage capacity, you will be in a situation in which, first of all, early in the morning, you cannot produce because the available energy is not enough to justify starting the turbine. Then there will be a moment that you start the turbine, you will be operating to the maximum power of your turbine, losing all this available energy, And the same happens in the afternoon. Very early in the afternoon, you have to drop the power of or you have to stop the turbine because the available power is not sufficient to operate the turbine. Which is the solution with storage? Well, the technical solution in storage is to buy a turbine which is low power compared to the really very low power compared to the peak power available during the day. And then what we do is we store every sun ray which is available will be used to be delivered to the storage system. So during the day we are producing, but also we are accumulating the excess of energy which is available, and all this energy that has been stored is used to continue operating with the turbine after the sunset. And this is especially important for several reasons. The first reason, obviously, is that we are enlarging the number of hours of operation. A typical CSP plant without storage in a country like Spain will be operating something like 1,800 hours per year. In Gema Solar, we are operating 6,000 hours per year because we operate most of the days in summertime at maximum power, day and night. The second big and relevant advantage of the storage is that the Europeans, we are demanding most of electricity, or say the moment in which the peak demand is highest in Europe is just 1 or 2 hours after the sunset. So at that time, PV is producing zero. It's not producing, but we are producing at the moment that the people is demanding electricity. This is, first of all, is the moment in which the price of electricity is escalating, is jumping. And second, socially, if you are not producing at that moment, you are not adding any power to the system. You are just subtracting number of hours of operation of somebody else. And again, this is not suitable. I want to emphasize on another aspect, is that this technology is composed of materials that are very resistant. You are going to see later on the examples, I mean the towers and the CSP configurations, but just realize that those plants are actually made on massive amount of concrete, galvanized steel, glass, very durable materials. It's true to say that if you go to a bank and you are asking for a loan and you are expecting to return the loan in 100 years, you will be fired from the bank. But really from the investor standpoint, my impression is that a well-maintained installation has unlimited duration. And it's true that already there are plants in the United States that were made in the 70s and they are in operation yet. So obviously they have already paid back the initial capital, and obviously those are producing very good benefits to the owners. So from my standpoint, even when most of the financial cases are based on 20-25 years, right now in Spain they have enlarged that period to close to 30 years. After 30 years, the CSP plants really are a gold mine to the owners because they are producing large amounts of electricity at the price in 30 years with just no raw material and just the operational and maintenance expenses that are ridiculous compared to the amount of electricity they are producing after the year. And the other relevant factor of the CSP, or benefit of the CSP technology, is the local content. What I mean, let me put you an example. Gemma Solar is a small plant, but it's composed of 80 kilometers of internal roads. Obviously, those internal roads were not produced in China. They were produced by someone local. And when I say local, I'm not referring to European or Spanish. Those internal roads were constructed by a guy who is located like 50 kilometers from the plant. The same for the foundations. I mean, we operate with 2650 heliostats that need a big foundation made on concrete and steel. Obviously, the concrete was produced at less than 50 kilometers distance from the plant. Everything in the plant is just normal materials, carbon steel pipes, stainless steel pipes, electrical installation, erection and assembling of the tanks and things like that. All that can be made locally. In the case of Gemma Solar, I estimate that about 95% of the added value was European. We just imported a couple of pumps from the United States. Maybe some electronics were also imported. But 95% of the added value was European. 90% of the added value was Spanish, and which is even more important, 65% of the added value was local, meaning Andalusian. And Andalusia is not the most industrialized region of Spain. In fact, it's one of the poorest and one of the regions having a bigger problem of unemployment. So considering Gemma Solar as considering Spain or considering the country in which the installation is going to be made as a black box, and just considering the inputs and the outputs inside and outside the black box, you will see that the investment that was needed to make Gemma Solar, just very few parts. I mean, the turbines were imported from Austria, some of the pumps were imported from Belgium, but most of the parts were made in Spain. Then, using a small investment, and there was like a multiplying factor close to 15 times the capital imported, or the value imported was multiplied by a factor of 15 in fostering the local economy, the economical activity, positions, jobs. Spain has the problem number one in Spain is the unemployment rate. Then we have created a lot of jobs directly and indirectly while we were constructing Gemma Solar. And in the long term, Spain is going to be saving a huge amount of cubic meters of gas or oil to be used that are going to be substituted by using solar energy. So it's a pity that you are not Mr. Rajoy, but I have to tell you that the CSP plants have created a very positive effect on the Spanish economy.